The Bigness of Po Yin. The wind and rain whipped through the jungle, tearing at the bamboo houses of the elephant camp. The rain splashed down Po Yin's slender brown body, but still he stood in the open square, afraid to go home with his bundle of firewood. Only minutes before, his friend Phoebe had told him the frightening news. The head of the camp, the tall Englishman, had visited Po Yin's sick father, and what was more, his visit had been a long one. The head of the camp was a busy person of great importance. What business could he possibly have with one who had been in bed these many weeks, with one who would never walk again? The rain fell in sheets so that Po Yin could hardly make out the bamboo houses on stilts that stood facing the square. Here he had lived all of his life. Here with his beloved elephant Maja close at hand he was happy. But now somehow Po Yin could sense that his happiness was threatened. Gathering up his courage at last, he climbed the bamboo ladder of his house. He sat down on the mat where his father lay, anxiously asked, "What did he say, Father?" Well, he asked many questions about Maja. He wanted to know how Maja could best be handled. But why? "It is known that I shall never walk again," his father answered sadly. "I have ridden Maja for 20 years. He is the largest and most valuable elephant in the camp. Another rider must be found for him." Po Yin thought of the big elephant that he loved so much, and a lump came into his throat. "Maja loves only you and me," he said thickly. "And all the good riders in camp have their own elephants. Who would they try to find?" "The Englishman will send to another elephant camp for a good rider," said his father. He closed his eyes for a moment, and then he opened them to look steadily at his son. "Po Yin," he said, "since I can no longer work, he cannot continue to feed us. He has offered to move us to the valley of 6 villages where you could find work in the rice fields." Po Yin sat stunned. The rain beat hard against the walls, and the wind swayed the house on its bamboo stilts. This is our home," he said at last. "And how could we leave Maja? I shall go to the Englishman and ask him for work." Po Yin's father shook his head sadly. "You are only 15, and so small for your age, my son. What work could you do in an elephant camp?" Po Yin knew he was small for his age, but he was not to be discouraged. "I shall go to him tomorrow," he said firmly. He did, but the busy head of the camp had no time to talk to him just then. He said, "I should come another day." Po Yin told his friend Phoebe, "I am sure that he knows what I want." "Am I so small that I am useless to everyone?" "Well, I'm larger and stronger than you," Phoebe answered. "Yet I'm not strong enough to lift the heavy chains which go round the teak logs. And what other work is there for a boy in an elephant camp?" Po Yin said nothing. His friend was right. In the elephant camp it was bigness that counted most. And in the elephant camp, where everything had to be big, 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 Po Yin was short and slender. What chance did he have? Later, Po Yin went as usual to spend a few hours with Maja. The elephant was now without a rider, and had done no work since Po Yin's father had been injured. With a loose chain hobble on his front legs, the great beast was free to wander the jungle in search of food. When Po Yin was still a mile away from the tall grass, he heard the faint tick-tock of Maja's wooden bell. As he approached the elephant, little boy began to call, "I come, big brother, I come!" And he kept shouting so Maja would recognize him and know where he was. Like many bull elephants, Maja had an uncertain temper. He took careful handling and worked only with his own rider. It was important not to startle him in the jungle, for elephants sometimes attack their own riders in a moment of sudden panic. But Po Yin was not afraid. He came often to play in the jungle with Maja, and he knew what care had to be taken. At the edge of the sea of grass, Po Yin stood still. He could hear the blowing sounds of Maja as he fed, and the flapping sound of his huge ears. "Come on now, big brother, come on!" cried Po Yin, and he sat down on a rock to wait. The tickety-tock-tock-tock of the bell grew louder. The grasses whirled and swayed, and then parted. Maja appeared with a trunk held high as he tried to get the scent of the one who called. Po Yin laughed. "My big brother is very hungry today." Maja's great curved tusk flashed in the sunlight as he approached. He reached out his trunk, making small whistling sounds through it, and Po Yin offered him the mango that he had hidden behind his back. Maja put it in his mouth and chewed contentedly. Then the boy took the hobble chain from the front legs of the elephant and tossed it on the rock. "To the mango trees, big brother!" he cried. Po Yin started off on the run. With a squeal of delight, Maja passed him, rushing ahead. Po Yin did not attempt to follow. He took a short cut to the wild mango trees. Even so, the elephant was there before him, feasting on the fruit. When the boy and the elephant had eaten all the mangoes that they could reach, Po Yin ordered Maja down. Then the boy climbed up onto the huge, prickly-haired neck and rolled off through the jungle like a mighty prince. To Po Yin there was no thrill in all the world that was equal to it. It was dusk before Po Yin returned to camp. His sister came running to say that the Englishman was eating that and greeted him warmly. "Come in, Po Yin. This is Kaya." He nodded toward a stranger. "He is Maja's new rider. Please see that he finds the elephant in the morning." The stranger was big, with a dark, frowning face and thin lips that twisted down at the corners. "I shall take him to Maja," said Po Yin quietly. "Good," exclaimed the Englishman. "One thing more. I am sorry, but you are too small to work in an elephant camp. Next week you are to go to the Valley of 6 Villages. There you will find work in the rice fields and send for your family." Po Yin sucked in his breath. He managed to nod and backed out. Too small. Too small for the elephant camp. It was true then. They were sending him away from his friends and his home, away from his beloved Maja because he was too small. At dawn the next morning he stood beside the tall grass while the new rider called to the elephant. Po Yin's offer to help only angered the man. Kaya called again and again, but in vain. Finally Po Yin was allowed to try, and his calls quickly brought the elephant out of the grass. The man's face was tight and hard with rage. "Stay away from him, boy," he snarled. "I'll show who is master." It was no idle threat. The big elephant was working harder in the teak forest on that day than ever before. The cruel man even struck at Maja's head with the double chain to make the elephant work faster. Po Yin felt sick and weak. He watched until he could not stand it any longer. Then he fled into the deepest shade of the jungle. Fear gripped his heart, for he knew Maja would not put up with such treatment much longer. Something terrible would surely happen. He did not go near the elephants the next day, but the following evening around the flickering campfire he learned what had happened. Maja, in a sudden burst of temper over his mistreatment, had ripped at another elephant with his tusks, and the next morning, with Kaya perched on his neck, Maja began working with the teak logs at the edge of the camp. Kaya was kicking at the sides of the elephant's neck and beating him with the double chain until he drew blood. Suddenly, with one terrible trumpet of rage, the huge beast raised his trunk, caught at the rider, and dashed him to the ground. Then Maja whirled and crashed into the jungle. When the other riders ran to Kaya, they found that he was still alive, but he was badly injured and would be unable to work for many weeks. In the days that followed, it became clear that something terrible had happened to Maja as well. His wild trumpeting could be heard for miles. For 3 anxious days the Englishman sent his best riders into the jungle to capture Maja, but none could approach him without being charged. Then came the day when Po Yin must go away to start his new life in the Valley of 6 Villages. A numb heaviness lay in his heart, as if something within him were slowly dying. He was packing his clothes when the Englishman entered to bid him farewell. Gently the man said, "When you are big and strong, Po Yin, come back." Po Yin lowered his eyes, his lips trembled. And what of Maja?" he asked. "Well, perhaps he is mad. I do not know. Unless he's caught, he may soon become a killer of men. Then I shall be forced to shoot him." "Shoot Maja?" Po Yin jerked up his head. He felt his blood running cold. "No, please, no! Let me try. I can catch him." The man's lean face tightened. "I cannot ask a boy to face a killer elephant." Po Yin's father stirred on his mat. "Let the boy go, sir. He and the elephant have often played together in the jungle. Maja loves this boy above all others. Is there anything that is stronger than love?" "Maja may have gone mad," objected the Englishman, but he looked at Po Yin with new interest. "I cannot order you to go. It is for you to decide." Po Yin hurried down the ladder and ran swiftly from camp. An hour later, Po Yin was approaching the tall grass, calling, always calling. A strange tightness came into his stomach. If Maja had gone mad, he would not know Po Yin. They would be as strangers. Po Yin trembled with sudden fear, but he forced himself to go on. Madge's bell sounded louder. Now, tickety-tock, tock, tock, tickety-tock, tock, tock. And now Po Yin could hear the flopping of the great ears. He was almost at the edge of the tall grass when he heard the enraged elephant blast out a sudden challenge. His heart stopped. Madge was coming straight at him. In terror, Po Yin looked about for a place of safety. The trees were far behind him. There was only one thing left to do, sit down on a rock and continue his calls, as he always had. Then Madge would surely recognize him. Suddenly the gray elephant burst from the tall grass in a breathtaking rush. His trunk was curled high for a powerful blow. His mighty tusks gleamed. Once again Po Yin called, and even as Madge charged forward, Po Yin managed a little laugh. "Big brother," he called, "you're in a great hurry this day." Madge lowered his head and stopped short. Slowly Po Yin let out his breath. Madge still knew him. "See, my big brother, I did not forget a mango for you." Madge's great trunk reached out and gently took the mango from the boy. Po Yin hugged the trunk, blinking back tears of happiness. He did not hear the riders and the Englishman come up behind him. And then the Englishman spoke. "A man who loves his elephant enough to risk his own life for him ought to make a good rider. Your father was right. This elephant loves you. He will surely work well for you." Po Yin was far too happy to speak. In the elephant camp, where everything had to be big, 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 little Po Yin's love had been big enough.